What up guys, Drifter here, playing some Need for Speed Payback. Now I'm doing something a little bit different. I've shown you guys some hints and tips for things, and I've showed you some guides and stuff, but today I'm gonna be a teacher today. I'm gonna teach you how I got my name. I'm gonna teach you how to drift. Now in Need for Speed Payback, drifting is a big part of the game. If you really want to absolutely nail it, there's a few things you should know on how to get the most out of drifting and really enjoy yourself. Now today I'm going to show you a few tips that I've picked up over the years on how to really make a great drift car, basic tips and tricks, and then some more advanced stuff we'll get into later. But first thing, oh pardon me, you're going to need a drift car. So pop yourself into the drift dealership. Now, this is where your wallet makes a big decision on what car you're going to get. Now, if you're just starting out the game and you're not flush with cash, you're going to have only a limited decision of what you can make. Now, depending on if you've got a derelict and you've decided to put one of those towards a drift, then that sort of cuts some of your money out, but it does mean you're going to have to build them up more. Now, if you're wondering if it's worth going from complete stock, buying yourself some crappy little underpowered car and throwing a heap of money in it, versus spending a couple $100,000 on some sort of supercar that's already got a whole heap of power, it depends on your budget. I recommend starting small, but not too small. So if you start off with basic things like the MX-5, for example, the Miata in the US, you're going to have to be putting a decent amount of cash to get this thing really performing well in terms of drift. This thing will have trouble holding drifts, seeming it's really low on horsepower. In my estimates, you're going to be spending about 100 grand getting this thing to a level where you'd be confident enough in drifting. So you may want to think long term about your build. I recommend buying something around the 50 grand mark, a bit more. The BRZ is a good starting point. On its own, completely stock, it's not bad on drift. Though a couple mods would make it a little bit easier. However, if you start heading up the price chain, something like a Silvia, a car that's basically already a drift car, it's a good start. Now, if you've got the DLC, like me, and you have one of these lying around, 306 horsepower, these things are awesome. Now, it won't look like that for you guys, it'll look stock. Oh, pardon me. I'm atrociously tired. This is a really good car for drift. If you buy it stock, it's really good at drift. It'll hold its angles and it has enough horsepower to be pretty decent. However, if you're willing to buy a car straight out of the box that's really good at drifting, you're probably best off to look around here. The Mustang and the Dodge Challenger are both fantastic starting cars, both of them punching out a massive wad of horsepower. They'll get you sideways. However, if you want a bit more finesse, personally, I'd go with this, the BMW E46 E3. Now, I know it's a little bit pricey at 93 grand. If you've just started out the game, that's a bigger number, but it's worth it. I've drifted this car completely stock and it could hold angles really well, hence me buying one. When I bought mine, all I did was put on the first upgrades that I could find at the shop. So the car runs level 5 stock, it's just got some level 6 parts. So the car is not overly powerful, and it's only level 202. So the car's not too much more powerful than stock. It just means I can maintain drifts a little bit easier and makes it a bit more fun. Also because I wanted my Hoonigan. Alright, now let's take it to the airfield. Airfield's a really great place to start, practicing your drifting. No cars are in the way, wide open spaces, and there's a couple of turns you can sort of get used to. Now, before you even start doing some mad skiddies, one big recommendation: drive manual. Now, A lot of people are driving automatic in this game, seeming you're changing gears really fast, especially in some of the high-end cars, thousands of horsepower, you're bouncing through gears really quickly. But I recommend if you're going to be really good at drift, run a manual. Holding a gear the way you want it to and having the car behave in terms of throttle response exactly the way you need it to is really important in drift. And it will keep the car right at that RPM range you want. It'll keep the car sliding at the angle you need, and overall it'll get you you'll get more points at the end of it. Though most cars, you don't, if you're a bit afraid of the manual gearbox and stuffing it up, most drifting is done within 2 to 3 gears. For example, the way that I've got this set up, between 3rd gear is for the slightly slower corners, and then 4th gear for the medium speed corners, and then 5th gear if you're using nitrous on a high speed corner, but it rarely touches 5th, so it's only bouncing between 1 and 2. But yeah, definitely recommend the manual gearbox. Now, one big tip is to drive your car stock. Make sure you drift it straight out of the box without adding mods beforehand. One big mistake people do is start adding power and upgrades before they really understand the car. That's what I did with this. I drove for about an hour completely stock, and I realized what I wanted to do with it. I just need that extra bit of power just to, make it a little bit easier so I can hold those drifts. And see, I've spent, in terms of cash, maybe about 30-40 grand on this car already, plus a single wheel spin, and I got lucky with it. But it holds amazingly well. Now, the upgrades you want are mainly acceleration and nitrous upgrades. Acceleration means you can get up to speed quickly, because obviously drifting, you're wiping a lot of speed during your corners. And nitrous for nitro drift, which we might cover in another episode. That'll be part of my pro tips. Now, step 4 is the 3 different types of drifting. The way that you initiate a drift can really depend on the different styles that you do and your car control. Step 1 is the way that the game asks, which is tap drift. And it's very simple. Drive in a straight line, turn, tap the brake real quick, the car will kick out and start to slide. This is the way that most of your drifting should be done. It's fairly responsive, and most cars respond to it really well. You can drift any single car in the game with sort of the exception of a drag car, but if you build it right you can. Tap drift is really useful in a lot of events to take corners a lot tighter without having to brake too hard. It's also the bread and butter of drifting in this game. Now, while it may not be authentic, it works and it's a lot of fun. The second type is the handbrake. The handbrake, as you can see me tapping, is a quick way of dropping some speed and is great for turning really quickly. Chucking the handbrake immediately locks up the back wheels and turns it in. Now, the downside to this is that it will take a little chunk of your speed as you hit it. The good news is that you will be able to turn quicker and tighter than if you could just with your brake. Though it depends on the settings, but we'll get to that in the next episode. Your third option is a Scandinavian Flick, an old rally driver's technique. This technique is all about the weight of the car being thrown left to right. While it's not as prevalent in this game, it absolutely is a possibility. Simply push away from the corner and then push back in. The weight of the car will then transfer and the car will start to slide. I'll show you again. Push away from the corner, then back in. Now, it's not as useful in lower cars, seeming that in most times you can just turn into the corner and it'll slide, but it's useful to bit of a show off, and it's a great way to maintain your drifts. Simply skating left to right down a straight means that, as you can see, my score on the top's not going away, and I'm just going back and forth, earning points. Now, as you can see, this entire time I've only been bouncing between 3rd and 4th gear, and I've had no troubles getting sideways. You should be listening to your car to really hear what it wants. When drifting, you should hear it lightly bouncing off the limiter. If it's bouncing like crazy, try and go up a gear. For example, in third gear, that's not too bad. But when you're going this way, it's bouncing off the limiter quite a lot, so you could probably go up a gear. Also try looking at your speedo. If you've got a certain speed you're drifting at, for example, this thing in a full slide does about 140k in third gear. Then try going through it in another gear. If the speed's higher, then you're doing a good job. If the speed is lower, like in that instance, then you're probably best to go down a gear. You want to be going as fast as possible for the most amount of points. Well, that's the stage 1, step 1, episode 1 on how to get drifting in Need for Speed Payback. I should be posting another episode fairly soon, and I'll be letting you guys know on more complex things like different types of tuning setups, different ways to really get your car unsteady, and some pro tips on different techniques on how to really maximize those points and chain together those drifts. So thank you very much for watching, guys. My name's Drift42. Keep it sideways.